So football is where we're heading next on the SportsMax Zone. Match week 18 beckons in the Red Nephew Jamaica Premier League. And there are some big fixtures to look forward to. And a couple of those will be live on SportsMax. Let's have a look now. Jamaica Gardens, Dunbeholden, Humberland, Chapelton Maroons, Portmore United, 7-time champions of the Premier League against former champions Harbour View, Veer against Waterhouse. On Sunday, Mount Pleasant, Arnett Gardens, that will be live on SportsMax. That's a top of the table clash. And then in a Monday doubleheader on SportsMax 2, Malines United tackle Montego Bay United and Cavalier play Racing United. A truly titanic matchup given the context of the season so far with this Mount Pleasant Arnett Gardens clash. And with us to preview it is Dwight Jeremiah, who is from the North Coast, which means that he's from a similar kind of part of Jamaica to Mount Pleasant. I'm not sure if he'll use his geographical position to back Mount Pleasant to win this one. Dwight?
I think I'll use more than geographic location, Lance. I'll use the current form table.
Yes.
It's a difficult one still to call. And if ever there was, so often we talk about 6-pointers. If ever there was one, this is one. I mean, a win for Mount Pleasant will take them 6 points clear of Arnett Gardens, but, a win for Arnett takes them level. It's pretty much a game where it's the best attack versus the best defense. Arnett currently boasts that with only conceding 10 goals. Mount Pleasant want more. But in terms of the goals department, that's where it matters. I mean, Arnett 25, Mount Pleasant 44. And I think the last time we were on the zone, I don't know if it was you or Ricardo, and I was discussing about Bradford's form, and I said it wasn't just the goal he scored, but the manner in which he did it and his movement. And we saw him get a double last time out for them. So yeah, I think it's going to be a good game, that's for sure. But I'm still going to give Mount Pleasant the edge because they're at home. Yeah,
and we were making the point as well, Dwight, that Shaquille Bradford tends to score goals in flurries. Whenever he starts to score, he starts getting a lot of them. And I think he has probably scored 7 or 8 goals now in their last 6 or 7 games. So he's in a patch. But Arnett Gardens are a team that, as you just suggested, you cannot underestimate them. And when I listen to their coach Xavier talk and their players, they sound confident. They have a lot of self-belief. And I know it's a long season. And the result of Sunday's match has very little to do with who will eventually win the championship. But Arnett haven't been champions in Premier League football since about 2017, Dwight. Do you think that they have the tools this year to go all the way?
I think they're trying to acquire what tools they feel they're efficient in. And I think they brought in Jeremy Nelson. Many talked about his, being experienced and stuff, to a midfield that, is already good with talent, but I think they wanted a little bit more experience in there. However, he is, for some coaches, suggest being a volatile person or someone who can disrupt things. But I guess they would have had a sit down and chat with him and explain the role they want him to play. He came in right away and played a decent role in the middle of the park. But you talk about Arnett being able to go all the way. I mean, I'm not quite sure yet, and there's still another round to go, so it gives us time to be able to make our minds up. But one thing is for sure, despite not winning for such a long time over the last few seasons, they have done really well leading up to the playoffs. So if you go by that alone, they should be a difficult team to play against. And Mount Pleasant will find that come Sunday. Even if they were to win, I think it's not going to be one of those games where, we saw them against Dunbeholden. They were quite smooth at the time. Racing, they did concede some goals, but the lethal weapons they have up front bailed them out. And I just think they have a little bit too much for Arnett at this point up front. I think that might be the case. Arnett, they are not scoring freely at the moment.
And I want to talk a little bit more about the tools Arnett possesses at the moment, because when you have someone like Shivani Willis, who is spending a lot of time on the bench and being used in many matches that I've seen as a super sub or a player coming off the bench, a player with a lot of quality, it suggests to me that Coach Gilbert has a lot of depth in his setup that he can call on.
He certainly does, and even there were questions with the goalkeeper that came in, and he did well in the last round, a game that we saw on TV. So I think, yes, he's getting the pieces of the puzzle that he wants together. Even in midfield, I spoke about Nelson coming in, but he certainly has options there. And we see even up front there with Shea Smith doing well. And then we saw even in the last game, Kimani Arboin was coming off the bench as well. So, yeah, you're right. In terms of his resources, he does have depth. And I think that's where Mount Pleasant has been able to outdo teams in the league. I think Arnett has learned their lesson from that. And that's probably why when they do so well before the playoffs, they tend to run out of legs when they get to the playoffs. And I think he's trying to mitigate that this time around. And there's some good qualities. Now, coming off the bench are players who could have started and are, in fact, impacting the game in a positive way. So he's not getting a drop-off now when he goes to his bench. In fact, he does get a lift when you have the likes of Arboin coming off the bench as well.
Yeah, a quick word on Harbour View. We've spoken so much about them in recent weeks, Dwight, because they have been struggling. They're in the relegation zone, and as former champions of this competition, we're not quite accustomed to seeing them in the lower half, well, more than the lower half, the lowest quarter of the table, if you want to put it like that. But they've brought back a few players in the transfer window. And do you suspect that they might be able to start turning things around? They'll be up against Portmore United in this round.
Difficult game to try and kickstart their season again, but it was long overdue. I look at Harbour View last time out, and it really just appears if it was quality. I was asking commentary by George when I did the game with them that what do they need to change, and I said, it's going to be difficult on the day when we were watching them because they really need personnel, they need new blood, they need new talent in it. It just appeared to be a bit stale and flat at the moment. I don't know. Some may argue they are not quite sure if the coaching setup is what it should be. I think, I don't know if it was here that you were suggesting that little Bernard was itching that maybe is feeling like he wants to be back on the sidelines. But they're going to have to try and get it right. But certainly that's a good start to get players back in, players who with some experience, players who have some talent to be able to get them there. Because I did say I was worried for Dunbeholden, and I still am because they're still on that free fall. And you did suggest, Ricardo, that it was more Harbour View that you were worried about. Well, I guess both of those teams are in the worrying column now because it has to be different. Anything like what we've seen so far from Harbour View, and I fear for them that they could go to that championship, which is a rough place to be.
Yeah, rough place to be indeed. Of course, Humber Lion at the bottom of the table in 14th position. Harbour View, Dunbeholden. Racing United in 11th position at this stage on 15 points. They had a promising start to the season, Dwight. And, at the end of the first round, Coach Anthony Patrick said, well, we were maybe about 7 points short of where we would ideally like to have been. And they're finding wins difficult to come by now. They're finding points difficult to come by now. What do you make of what's happening with them?
I've often said when teams come up to these leagues, they need a little break. And sometimes we see really good performances. I remember the season when, Lime that was just there. And they almost got past Cavalier, and there is a dubious goal that got them out. And then there are other games that they did well against Montego Bay and just didn't. I think the same thing for Racing. They started so well in the season, but there was, they left the game with nothing but good performance. And the fans really happy with what they saw in terms of just the open attacking play. I just think they took a long time to find balance in terms of playing their style, but not being so open. And the game against Mount Pleasant recently, they did score. I mean, they scored 2 goals. And for the most part in this league, you score 2 goals, it's likely that you leave the game with something. They didn't. And I just think it's too open, too easy to get at. And even their style of play on counter-attacking play, leaving a lot of players up top. We see teams just leaving 4 back and just stopping them by smothering their outlet and preventing their runners from going. So it's going to have to be a case where I think a more pragmatic approach from their coach in terms of just start not with wanting to win, but just pick up points here or there. Make it a bit difficult to be scored on. I think that's one of their main problems at the moment. They play good, open, attractive football, but at the expense of conceding. They're not outscoring their opponent, and that's a problem.
Yeah, of course, it will not be easy because they're taking on the Cavalier on Monday. They've, had 3 draws in their last 5 games, but no wins. So those wins really difficult to come by. Well, Dwight, we look forward to hearing you at the weekend in Jamaica Premier League action. Thanks very much, as usual, for joining us on the SportsMax Zone, and I'm sure we'll chat again pretty soon.
Okay, awesome. Anytime.
All right, and send up some fruits for me, or flowers.
Flowers?
It's the garden parish.
It's a garden parish.
What's wrong with this man? Flowers for him? No way.
No, not that type of flowers, Mariah. Not like garden flowers to beautify surroundings.
I think we're going to take a break.
My word.
I want to
Let's go
talk to the
break.
Sunshine Girls. I don't want to talk to you. Break time.